Gossipnista here, your one and only source into the real lives of New Yorkers and what it's like to live in New York City. So is it all glitz and glamour? Where do you start? What should you know? And who am I? I'll tell you everything you need to know, and you'll thank me for it. XOXO Gossipnista. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Gossipnista podcast. I'm your host, Mariana Monks. My guest today is Mike Schulte, a native New Yorker, NYC realtor, and content creator on all things New York and so much more. And can I just say, speaking to a native New Yorker is always so exhilarating. The rawness and authenticity from the conversation with Mike and I was refreshing and one of the reasons I wanted to bring him on. Today, we'll talk about Queens, New York's future, NYC real estate, tips for moving to the city, apartment hunting, top 3 things to consider, and too much more to mention. So here's my conversation with Mike. Hey, Mike, I am very excited to have you on the podcast today. I truly appreciate you joining to do this interview. How are you doing today?
Listen, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm doing well. I'm doing really, really well. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I'm happy because I get to ask you a bunch of questions, not only for myself, but also for the listeners. So, and it's all going to be New York related. So I'm going to dive into the first question here, Mike. And the one I like to start off with everyone is, are you originally a New Yorker? Are you a native New Yorker, Mike?
Yes. My parents still live in the same house I grew up in Regal Park.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. You said Regal Park? Is that how
In
you say
Regal
it?
Park. Yeah.
Okay. And because I'm not a native and I don't know where that's at, like what borough?
That's in Queens.
It's in Queens. Okay. So you grew up in New York. Okay. Can you kind of briefly tell me, how it was growing up in New York?
Well, I mean, I grew up in I grew up in like 80s, late 80s, early 90s New York.
Uh-huh.
Which was a totally different world than it is today. The city was not a safe place. The city was 100% different. And over the last couple of decades, we've seen a huge change. And, New York has become, prior to COVID, one of the top international travel destinations year after year for the last 5 or 6 years now.
100%. I'm sure it's evolved tremendously and you've kind of seen it all. And so,
yeah, I mean, I remember 42nd Street being like pimps and prostitutes and peep shows and drugs. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. So that was like Times Square?
That was Times Square. Yeah, I was like 12, 13. It's a crazy world, but that's what it was.
Wow. You literally have seen some things. And again, I am so happy to be speaking with a native New Yorker. I've had some native New Yorkers on the podcast before, but not as many as I'd like. There's a lot of transplants in the city. So, and so, I'm curious, have you ever lived outside of New York or moved outside?
I mean, with the exception of college, where I was in Western New York, in between Rochester and Buffalo. I've been in Queens pretty much my whole life. I did do a semester in college in Costa Rica, which was cool. So I spent like 3.5 months there, which was interesting.
Wow.
Especially since like I was there for 9/11, which was a whole different kind of situation.
Wait, so during 9/11, you were in Costa Rica, not actually in New York?
Correct.
Okay. And how was that to kind of see that happening
So
from afar?
I was walking to school, right? And when I say school, don't think anything in like an American construct. Like it was like a house where the bedrooms were converted into classrooms, and like my class was, I think there were like 3 or 4 of us, right? And it was level based, like it was language immersive, so you could really learn Spanish. So I'm walking to school and this chick taps me on the shoulder as I'm getting close that I went to the school the semester before. And I take off my Discman. So you can tell how dated a reference that is even at this point, right? And she's like, a plane just ran into the World Trade Center. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because I mean, for anybody that knows, like the World Trade Center was bombed maybe 5, 6, I don't know, but previously to this in the basement.
Mm.
So, as a New Yorker, you become a little mute to things.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then I walk into school and CNN in English is on regular Costa Rican TV.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's when you knew it was big, kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I sat there and watched the buildings come down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you saw that, you come back to New York after that time period. Was it
Mhm.
just a whole different world?
Yeah, I mean, for a period of time.
Mhm.
And like anything, we forget things really quickly.
Mm.
I don't wanna say we forget,
Yeah.
but, like, it's not as top of mind,
Mhm.
as time passes because you continue, to move back into to life, and then,
Yeah.
you have your moments where you talk about it and everybody has their story if they're older and lived
Mhm.
through it, but, overall, it's,
We've rebuilt from that time.
yeah, I mean, from anything, New Yorkers are an incredibly resilient bunch. Like, if you think about any of the things that have gone on, like if you think about
Mhm.
9/11, right? If you think about Hurricane
Mhm.
Sandy, if you think about the blackout, like you see the best of New Yorkers, even during COVID, right? You see the best of New Yorkers during this time. Like you would think, people think New Yorkers we're hard headed, right? And we're
Mhm.
tough and we don't, we're mean, and I mean some of that may just be like a
Stereotype.
default resting bitch face that like is part of like something when you breathe in enough of the
Mhm.
air, but we're the first ones to like sit there and be like, okay, we need to wear masks
Yeah.
and like set an example by that,
Yeah.
right? And that's not something you would instinctually think from like the person that's like right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But when it comes to rough times, like I'll take a New Yorker over anybody else.
100%. I can't more so wholeheartedly agree with you. Being actually new to New York and just feeling the whole energy of this time during the pandemic and how you just mentioned everyone has been on top of it and just the whole state and everyone coming together. I've never seen more of a bonding in a place than New York City. So where do you live now? Curious. And have you moved around the city since, being here, a native New
So
Yorker?
I've lived in Queens my whole life. Right? I grew up in Queens. When
Oh
I
my
moved out of
gosh.
my parents' house, I moved to Jackson Heights. I was in
Okay.
like when I came back from college, I went back to my parents' house like a lot of people do, right? And then when I eventually moved out, I moved to Jackson Heights. I was there for about 7 years. And then right before my son was born, we started getting like
Mhm.
we had a nice sized one bedroom, right? By New York City
Mhm.
standards. And we started getting all the furniture and stuff, and we were like, holy crap, like this ain't gonna work. Like
Yeah.
we need a bigger place.
Uh-huh.
So my wife was my girlfriend then, wife now, was almost 9 months pregnant.
Oh my
And we
gosh.
went out and we looked for a place and we moved to Glendale. So right now we're in like Glendale, right on the Ridgewood Bushwick border in
Oh
Queens.
wow. Oh
Yeah.
wow. That's amazing though that one that she's out there at 9 months looking for an apartment because the apartment process is grueling in general in New York and glad that you guys got into a bigger space there. And so literally Queens your whole life and it's I'm so curious like what is it about Queens, Mike? Because you know
So
most
I've answered this question a lot. I've been asked this question a lot, and
Mhm.
and you don't realize it until you leave Queens, right? And what it is the fact that multiculturalism is ingrained in our DNA.
Mhm.
The fact that Queens is arguably the most diverse place on the planet Earth,
Mhm.
um, is something that when you leave, you realize doesn't exist in most other places. Like even other big cities, even other countries, even other big cities in other countries,
Mhm.
you don't see multiculturalism. You don't see, the plethora of food
Mhm.
that you do in Queens.
Okay. And thanks for defining it in that way because I my other kind of devil's advocate is like New York as a whole is very multicultural, right? But you're saying just Queens in general is that much more, and then it offers the food and just
So
different.
if you ever take time and just like ride the 7 train, and obviously this is different now, obviously, but like a year ago, pre-corona, right? Like you could get on the 7 train at one end at Main Street in Flushing, right? And take it to the last stop in Queens, which is in Long Island City, right on the water, Vernon, right? And during that period, you very well like would be exposed to the United Nations in almost its entirety in what you're able to witness and you know just what Queens is.
Wow.
And you know, it's something that when you've lived it your whole life, it just becomes part of who you are, and then you don't realize how important it is until you don't see it or you don't experience it because you're somewhere where it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of gave me goosebumps with that reference, and also wanting it to be that time and period again. Right.
Yeah.
But, and so what would you say your overall experience in New York has been like, and kind of just diving a little deeper into that, what is it that you like and dislike about New York City?
I mean, I love the culture. I love the art world. I love the creative people. I love the energy. At one time, I would have been like, I enjoy the nightlife, but you know, I'm a little bit older now, and I'm like, you know, with a 5-year-old, you're not staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning anymore. But there's just literally anything you want is here. Like I just did an ad with a major food delivery brand, and in the ad, like we take a dart and throw it at a world map, right? And like wherever it hits, that's where we order dinner from. And like you can't do that almost anywhere else. Like
Agreed.
you go to London, right? Which is one of the close comparatives to New York, and they don't even have remotely as close as the wide breadth of food options that we have here. What don't I like about New York? So I'm very much just as comfortable in the woods as I am in the city, because I spent a lot of time as a youth involved in Boy Scouts, and then as a later, like being a leader and then a scoutmaster. So I spent a ton of time in the woods. So for me, I like a little more space and a little more fresh air and a little more green. And they do have parks, and that's one cool part about New York. But you know, I love getting upstate, you know, and just stretching out.
Okay. So you like a little more remoteness as well. Okay. So
Oh,
then
absolutely.
So to an extent, you don't like so much that city confinement and bustle and stuff like that all the time.
No. Like we're at a point where we're probably like we're looking upstate to buy like a country home. And we'll probably split our time between like upstate and New York City.
And that's what a lot of New Yorkers do though, right? That is like the dream, right, Mike? Kind of having your city life and also the upstate life. And I love that you noted that, because you know, there's so much greenery in upstate New York and possibilities. So amazing. And so let's talk about COVID and what that's done for New York in 2020. And obviously it's changed it, right? What has your perspective been with regards to that?
I mean, so it depends on like what perspective you're asking me from. Like there's a lot of different ways New York has been affected. And the world has been affected obviously by this. But I think like anything, I think New York will rebound. I think the likelihood is it will probably take us 5 to 7 years to get back to the economic level we were at pre-COVID. And it'll probably still take us another 1.5 to 2 years to get back to some what we used to see as normalcy, like being able to go out without a mask and not worry about, you know, do I have hand sanitizers and 47 wipes with me? And, you know, a pre-worried about virus world, which will happen. Like, you know, it happened 100 years ago during the Spanish flu, you know, and that is a large argument from what I've read
Right.
as to why we had the roaring 20s, because you took people and you kept them inside for so long and you repressed all those things. And then people internally kind of like eat into themselves, right?
Yep.
And start, trying to either grow, or they totally devolve into to voids, right? And then once it opens back up, I mean, fall 2021 is going to be humongous. Like New York is going to see madness. It's going to be like from morning to night, all day long. New York, like it's going to be crazy.
Wait. Why August, September specifically?
Because that'll be the time where you have enough of people that have gotten the vaccine, where you start to see the influx of tourists come back, right? And once you have the influx of tourists, then you can have all of the other businesses that support the city, because then you have the money coming with the tourists.
So what you're saying is 5 to 7 year for just economic wise, rebuilding New York again, and about, year and a half to 2 to fully just bringing it back to that nightlife that you talked about, right?
To be able, like, I'm like, it's funny. Like I was just looking at videos from a year ago, right? I was like, all right, what was I doing a year ago? And a year ago today was the last time I went to live music.
Yeah.
I went to a hip hop show in right off Times Square. So I think it's going to be, I think it'll be interesting. I think you're going to see people come back and be good, but it'll change a little bit. I hope the one thing I hope stays is masks, in the way Eastern culture uses them. So like if you see people in Eastern culture use a mask in public, generally it's a form of respect, where they may be sick and they don't want to get anybody else sick, so they wear a mask.
Right.
So that's the one thing I hope. Knowing how thick-headed Americans are, my guess is that's probably not going to happen. But maybe in cities like New York versus other places in the country.
Okay. So, and I'm going to probe into that mask thing. So you want those to stay in the sense of even after everyone's been vaccinated, or?
Yeah, no, like if you're sick, wear a mask.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
You don't have to, like, after everybody's vaccinated, take the masks off. Let's go back to normal, hug people, It's crazy to think that we never thought it was an issue for somebody to sit there and blow out all of their germs onto a cake, and then everybody eats it.
Oh my gosh. Did you just say that? You did. Yeah. That is a great picture to think about.
Right. So we'll get back to eating, birthday wished cake soon. That might be something that people are a little more hesitant. They're like, I'm good, thanks.
Well, I think you painted a great picture with regards to, where you've seen it, where you feel it's going, and where there's, hope around the corner in that sense. So, and with that, being a native New Yorker, and, I kind of want to know, like, what does it mean to be a native New Yorker from your perspective? And do you believe in that whole, you have to live here 10 years to become one? Like, I really want to hear this from a native New Yorker.
So I don't know, right? Like, I don't know that there's a specific formula, right? I don't know that there's like a specific criteria. I think over different periods of times, people have labeled it, because New York was a different place 20, 30 years ago. Like there was a lot more grit to the city. But then if you look at the progression of New York over the last couple of decades, there's a huge influx of people that are not from New York City, that have come here, that have lived here, that have made homes here during this period where New York has seen an incredible revival. So like, I mean, can you tell a difference from like the kid from Ohio that comes to New York and is here for like 2 weeks or 3 months, and versus like the girl from Brooklyn that's originally from Minnesota but has been here for 6 years and lives in Bushwick? Yes. Right. But can you tell the difference between that Minnesota girl and somebody that's been here their whole life? That is a lot less discernible than the first set.
Okay.
So I think what's happening is New York is just it's becoming, there's like very few native New Yorkers even I know. Like
Wow.
outside of the people that I went to high school with, obviously, right? Because they lived in New York if they went to school here, right? Like outside of them, like that I've known in my professional life, there's very few native New Yorkers.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you put it that way, and again, you kind of categorized in different categories, all I'm thinking is I stick out with regards to needing a long time before I start blending in that
Yeah.
sense.
Well, I mean, so my wife is originally from Long Island, right?
Okay.
So she's been in New York. She's been in the city for like a decade, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And you can see a discernible difference between like her and like her sister in from Long Island. And it's just a difference like we were talking about that New York versus everywhere else. And it's not better, it's just different.
I mean, to even be subcategorizing Long Island from just New York, like that's crazy because like you kind of picture it one.
No, there's a huge difference between the two. Huge.
Okay. Oh, wow. You're getting to a whole new level and I'm loving this. Okay. So it's good to know though. You kind of give people perspective in the sense that, you know, original New Yorkers can kind of tell who's who from where and what accent is what and so forth to an extent. So work on your accent. Is that
I mean,
the takeaway?
I would suggest be who the hell you are. Like, don't worry about the fact that you're not a native New Yorker. Like, be who you are. Because I think that's the world we're moving into. I think if this quarantine has taught us anything, it's that what's important to us is changing.
Yeah.
And you can see that in the way in which we consume. You can see that in the way in which we engage. So I think it's just about being authentic and being real to who you are.
Yes. And I love that. And that's something that you do very well. So with that, Mike, I want to ask your advice because this podcast is, you know, based to kind of help those that are looking to move here, but as well as, you know, New Yorkers as a whole. But, you know, what advice would you give to someone who is new to New York City, looking to make the move here still during, you know, this time and so forth?
So, I would not come to New York right now without an opportunity. I wouldn't have said that pre-COVID because, you know, there's countless opportunities, but just given the landscape and given everything that's going on, even like, and I'm not saying there's people that can't absolutely make it without a doubt, right? But right now, given the moment that we're in today, I wouldn't come here unless you also had like a large bag of money with you and you know, you could say you could sustain yourself for 6 to 8 months until, you know, we see some vibrancy in New York again.
Define a large bag of money, please. Like I want to give people perspective in the sense of what you need.
So here's the reality, right? So you can live, everybody's life is different, right? You can live very frugally and far from Manhattan and still within you know the 4 boroughs, and probably get by on a few $1,000s a month.
Okay.
Including rent, bills, food. Like you wouldn't be eating out, you wouldn't be going out drinking. You could buy food, you could still buy, you know, buy a drink every now and then and you know have alcohol at home. But at a very bare minimum, probably a few $1,000s. Because then you also have expenses like your Metro card and getting around. And the reality is if you're in New York and you make friends, you're gonna want to go out. Like that's part of what New York is, right? So it very quickly escalates and then there's levels to like what you want. Then it's like, well, you know, I want to live in Soho. Okay, great, absolutely. Now you need significantly more money, and that's okay. It's a matter of what people want and what they're comfortable living with.
Perfect. And so when you say opportunity, you mean have a job, have something lined up,
or something, or have for whatever reason be in some position that's in enough demand that you can absolutely find work here.
Perfect. And any advice you'd give to current New Yorkers?
I would have said like, you know, relax a little bit, like chill. But I think Corona did that. I think your average New Yorker, regardless of native or been here for a while, is less easily triggered, less combative, less confronting now than they were a year ago. Like, I think people are more understanding, more patient, and patience is not something New Yorkers typically have. Just because, we're always moving. But I think now more than ever, I think that's the case. What would I tell New Yorkers? I don't know. I wouldn't tell them anything. I think I'm very much of like a mindset of like things are the way they are, and like I don't ever want things to change. Like if I look at like my life and I look at like what people would classify as like the bad shit that's happened, right? I wouldn't ever, if I could, like rewrite those stories. Like I'd still want to absolutely love them. Like I'd still, if I had a time machine and I could go back, right? I'd still want to live through Corona.
Yeah, life, it's kind of just played out the way it's supposed to be playing out. Gossipnista here. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I wanted to hop in here to ask that if you haven't yet, if you could please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen. This will help me reach more people and spread the word about New York City and those who love it. And if you want to stay up to date, be sure to follow @Gossipnista Podcast on Instagram. Now, back to the show. Love to kind of move on to our second segment and discuss more so about, your background, what it is you do for work, and then also how you've grown this amazing, New York centric social media content. So let's kind of dive into that. Tell me, Mike, about your background. What is it you went to school for? What is it you're doing now for a living?
I've been here pretty much, like I said, my whole life.
Right.
I went to college. I got a degree in international business with a specialization in marketing and a minor in Spanish.
Oh, ¿hablas español?
Sí.
¿Por qué español?
Porque yo viví en Costa Rica por un ratito durante la universidad y antes de mi esposa, casi todas las mujeres en mi vida eran latinas.
Oh, okay, I understand now. Entiendo. Y lo hablas muy bien.
Gracias. So after college, I graduated in 2003. And the economy was not good. Like not as bad as it was in 2008 or now, but it wasn't good. Like finding a job was not easy. And I ended up taking a job in retail management and doing that for like 6 or 7 years until like the economy crashed. So I took a month off after, everything shut down, and I went to Africa.
Wow.
I sat on my couch and watched Family Guy in South Park for about a month. And then I was like, all right, I'm done with corporate America. And my pops had done real estate for about 15 years at that point. And it'd always been like, oh, come do this, you'll love it, you'll make a lot of money. And I was like, Dad, I'm in my 20s. I'm making a lot of money. Like, why would I leave this to do something that's 100% commission based? Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And, as much as I hate to admit it, I probably should have listened to him earlier, but like, you learn what you learn and you're able to experience what you can from, your life. So I started in real estate, and I've been doing that now almost 12 years.
Wow.
Now I run a team. My dad is like retired. I run a team of 8 at Corcoran. Okay. We cover Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk. Yeah, and then I started creating content like about 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, and there's been a bunch of transitions and adjustments, and like redirections and pauses, and but that's like anything. Like we all know the adage of like the 10,000 hour rule, right? Like it takes 10,000 hours. I think it's more than that, honestly, in most cases.
Okay.
But it takes a while. Like if I look back at some of my early content versus like today, it's like night and day different. But if I look at like today and I look at like a year ago, it's night and day different. So it's like you're always going to continue to progress, and it's just about consistency more than anything.
You're telling me, yes, no, and okay, so you went into 2 questions that I asked, my fault for doing that, but so
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
break down the first one. So you said,
yeah.
you're a broker, a realtor, you have a team of 8 within Corcoran, and you've been doing it for 12 years, and so your dad had a lot of inspiration with regards to you going into the market, and
I mean, in all fairness, like I've sold shit my whole life.
mm,
Like my mom tells a story about how like when I was a little kid in elementary school,
mhm,
in first grade, she got a call from the teacher because I was selling plays on like my handheld video game to like
uh-huh,
my classmates, like I was running an arcade in
oh my
class. So like, it definitely took some. He definitely, it helped with him having been there because it was always
Mhm,
uh, a resource. But like my
yeah,
pops and I are two very different people. Like I'm very growth motivated, and my pops
mhm,
is very like happy living his consistent life.
mm.
So you have some differences in those regards, and that's fine.
So you've been entrepreneurial at heart since you were young then, and you also have sales chops, and so, real estate kind of just
Right.
honed into those 2 things, and you are your own boss now, and so have you loved it the whole time? Has it been hard? Like, tell us a little bit about that process.
So if I'm brutally honest, right, like the
Mhm,
first 6 years, I was
mhm,
just a typical real estate agent. Doesn't work enough, drinks too much,
mm,
parties too much, thinks they're
okay,
doing better than they actually
mhm,
are. Doesn't make 6 figures, and
mm,
then my girlfriend got pregnant, and now wife,
mhm,
and she was like, "Okay, you have 60 days to make $25,000. Otherwise, you have to go find a real job."
mm, mhm, mhm.
And that's when everything changed.
Wow,
And now she works with me, and she runs like the whole operational side of the business.
wow.
And yeah, yeah, yeah. So a lot's changed,
Mhm,
and like any business, there's always ups and downs.
mhm.
But her joining in the last year and change has been a huge addition to what we're capable of. It's like one of those situations where 1 plus 1 equals more than two.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. She's not only your partner in life, she's your partner in work, and you guys are
Yeah.
wheeling and dealing together. That's like inspirational. I love that. And so when we talk, realtor, broker, New York specific, you mentioned in the beginning what you weren't working as much, and it's more like, just kind of slacking when you start in the real estate business, if that's kind of how we want to put it. Um, did you only do, like, residential sales then? Was it rental sales as well? Like, define what it
I
is
mean,
that you're
I've done so
Mhm,
I've done mostly residential business, like
mhm,
rentals and sales,
mhm,
throughout my career. Like the commercial stuff that we do tends to be, it isn't leasing. Like it's
mm,
not like office or restaurant space,
mhm,
but like building sales. So if someone's selling, like we sold a building in Tribeca, we have another portfolio we're working on right now.
mhm,
So because all most of my relationships are landlords and property owners,
mhm,
um, it just makes sense.
mhm. And so
And they don't care where the deal's coming from at the end of the day, whether it's a residential or a commercial broker.
Right, right. And so more so, kind of to give, I guess, the audience or newbies or people that don't know too much with regards to New York real estate market, where's the money at? Is it, I mean, obviously it's probably commercial and residential, but what about rental?
So I mean the money you can make is endless,
Mhm,
right? Like literally
mhm,
endless. Like you can put any number you want on a board and you can make that much money,
mhm, mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm,
But you then have to be willing to do the work that's necessary in order to make that
mhm,
money. So there's no one broker, there's no one firm that can influence anything enough that impacts anybody else's ability to achieve their dreams.
so it's all the work you put into it.
Yeah.
Thank you for defining with regards to, where you started, where you've gone, what the, real estate market in New York kind of looks like. And I kind of want to tie it into this thing I saw on your Instagram. And that is a pretty well-known interview you did with someone that a lot of people might know from television and just New York as a whole. I saw you did an interview with Ryan Serhant recently. And
Yes.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
how did that happen? Like, can you give us more insight with regards?
So yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. So it's funny. I was just having a conversation about something
Uh-huh.
similar yesterday. So if you look at people like Ryan, right, and like
Mhm.
you look at what they're doing, it's not actually them.
Mm.
It's the core people that are around them that's doing the majority of the
Mhm.
heavy lifting,
Mhm.
right? At that point when you're at that level, right? So it's like you want to know the people that are on the
Mhm.
teams, right? Like so in a lot of cases over the last few years and in getting involved in creating content, I'm more personally interested in like the creatives around an influencer than the influencer.
Mm. Mm.
So
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
creative director for Ryan Serhan is a friend of mine. And
Mhm.
like I've known him since he's come to the city because the
Mm.
creative world is only so big. And like when he came to the city, Ryan and myself were the only two brokers in New York with a full-time videographer putting out content. Um,
Oh my gosh.
that's how it happened. I reached out to this guy and I was like, "Hey, listen, like I'm trying to raise, money for New York City restaurant workers.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just like kind of want to talk to other people about New York, like, and I know Ryan's got a book. So like, is this something he'd be open to doing?" And he was like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Mhm. Mhm.
And really, it's about asking, but it's also about knowing the right person to ask. Like you could
Mhm.
DM Ryan and that would have went nowhere.
Of course, yes, but you could try. You could try, but
Right, right. You absolutely can. Yeah, and one in a million, you may get a shot, but you're a lot more likely to get a response to a DM to somebody that's on the creative team, the creative director, or wherever,
mhm.
than the person themselves. And the reality is you're gonna learn more from that person than you'd ever learn from
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah. And I love how you put it in those perspectives, like you're right. It's all the people around you that are kind of helping you to elevate you and continue to, bring in the money and that amazing work that you're kind of the front person promoting it and doing so. But, just like yourself with your team of eight and Ryan with his team, like you guys are the anchor of all that was built.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that were able to get that interview and you both are doing amazing. So thanks for sharing that story. And I kind of want to tie that into the content you're creating now, right? So you are a
Uh-huh.
big content creator with regards to just things about New York. I know you like art as well. I know you had a podcast. That's one of the things where I actually found you, Mike. So kind of tell me a little bit about all that you're doing, what it's focused on, and where you're hoping to take it.
Yeah, I started about 5 years ago. Um,
Mhm.
just because I realized at that point that like this is where things were going.
Mhm.
I was probably also somewhat influenced by like a watching a few too many Gary V videos. Um, I started creating content, and at the beginning, it was like, all right, let me like nobody tells real estate like nobody creates real estate content. Nobody like talks about the insides of like the real estate business, or like
Mhm.
what you need to do or how the processes work or what you should know or like create any sort of educational value in
Mhm.
that sphere. So I saw an opportunity and that's what I created. I taught myself how to video edit. Um, and I put out like 140 episodes or 140 pieces of content and something in some regards for
Mhm.
a while until I realized that, real estate's fun, but you only care about real
Mhm.
estate if you're in the business or you're actively
Mhm.
in the like if you're actively partaking in some kind of real estate transaction. Like if you're
Mhm.
looking for a
Mhm.
home or if you're looking for an apartment or like That's when you look at real estate. You're not just like on a random Tuesday in the middle. You're like, oh, let me look at apartments. Like, granted, somebody may do that, but nobody for the majority does that. So I realized I needed to like go broader, and I realized that like, and obviously there was a little influence from Gary Vee at that point, and that's kind of like where I took things for a while, because a lot of them, like the shit that I would teach my agents, like nothing. Let's take that. Like nothing Gary Vee says is original. Like his thoughts are just like the same as like what you've heard from a million different people, just said in different contexts and different tones, right? It's like sometimes you can hear the same message 15 times, but it's until you hear it in a certain way that it actually clicks. So I realized that like the lessons I was teaching my agents are those same kind of moments. And I kind of shifted into like that, and then vlogging, and I hired a full-time videographer at that point, because I was like, now I'm 300 episodes deep and I'm just like sick of video editing. So I hire a full-time videographer. And I did that for about a year. Right? Doing the vlogging, the being everywhere on social, the starting a podcast, the the audio, video, everything you could possibly do, right? And then I got bored.
Okay.
I took a break. I took like 3 months off from social media. Like I would occasionally peruse, but I was like, it's just done. And like I took a step back and I looked at things, and I was like, Instagram feels fake to me. Like Instagram, real like. So when I look at the networks, this is what I see. Like Facebook is like angry old people complaining about things, right? The one good thing to Facebook is groups. Like there's a huge opportunity within Facebook groups. Other than that, it's just like people yelling at each other. Instagram, people are living their best fake life. And in Twitter, it's like everybody's thinks their opinion matters. Whereas TikTok, I actually see people sharing vulnerability, which is something we haven't seen yet, at least in the realm of social media. And granted, social media only has a 12, 13-year history, but we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that openness. And I think that's driving a shift, and that's kind of what I found to be fun. So I started messing around with TikTok, and the first video I put out went viral.
Wow.
And it literally was an Instagram story. Like, but it worked perfectly for TikTok, because like that's the content was there.
What was it about?
So one of my agents, right, we're in the office, right, and one of my agents, so there's like 3 of us in the frame, right, so there's enough to keep people visually interested, right? So I'm making fun of one of my agents because she just signed the lease for an apartment in Queens after talking shit about Queens for 2 or 3 months. So like I'm like, so where is this apartment? And she's like, New York City. I'm like I'm like I'm like, in what borough? She's like, and runs away, right? And that, I mean, listen, that helps you get off to like a okay start, but like it's nothing incredible, and it wasn't like the world changed. Like I went from a few to a few hundred followers, and obviously that's grown over time, but it was just fun. Like I was enjoying the ability to create without having the need to have anybody there, without the need to having to direct somebody, right? Because it's a different frame when you have the ability to just pull your phone out and whatever you record. And frankly, I mean, the thing people do not talk about enough is how simple TikTok has made video editing. And it's not that they've done anything revolutionary, because a lot of apps have drop and drag and pull in, but like the ability to create high quality is incredible. Like it's non-existent across social.
Right. Wow. I do agree with you in that sense. Yeah. And so let's get more into specific metrics with you and your TikTok, Mike, because you literally have gone viral. And please tell me in what amount of time it's taken, because that I've checked, you got like 3.3 million likes, hundreds and thousands of followers. And, how did your content change after that one video? And
So the
what?
first video wasn't it. Like, and there was no, I'm gonna be honest, there is no one. Like if you, so I was scrolling through, ironically enough, this morning, my videos, just like looking at what's there. Because occasionally I like to try different things. So like I've recently jumped into old videos and started commenting on like old videos just to see like what'll happen. Or like who was commenting when you had 10,000 followers versus 180,000 followers. So there hasn't been any one video that's been like 30 million views that like things blew up. Like there's a few videos, like I have maybe 10 videos with like a million plus views, but it's more than anything just consistency.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
It's consistently putting out content. And there's ebbs and flows, and like anything as a creator, you try things all the time. So sometimes you put out more, sometimes you put out less, sometimes you put out different, sometimes you put out the same, sometimes like it. And during that period, you get a better understanding of kind of what works, and then you try to move towards that.
So I thank you for sharing that. So literally, I would say you've been on it for a year. You've grown tremendously. Your content is ever evolving, but what you're saying is consistency is the key to kind of doing this. And so with regards
And just be
to
yourself.
yes, and that's one of the key reasons I was drawn to you. You have this authenticity in the content you create, which I love. And so, what is the hope with regards to the content you're creating and just
so there's a lot of different directions that things are going. I've done some bigger brand deals recently, which are nice. Because they help pay a bill at the end of the day. But the goal is just to continue to do this. Like eventually I'll have a production company, like a full-fledged production company. But in the short term, it's to continue to do what I want to do. And, that'll change. Like I may spend 2 months not in New York City, documenting like a trip across America. Like, random things. So like, listen, I'm trying to get, so the same way that like I went from real estate, which is like a small umbrella, to like motivation, which is like a slightly large umbrella, right, to New York City, which is an even bigger umbrella. Like I don't want to be limited by New York City. So like I do have a transition point that's kind of we're trying to plot right now, to like still do the New York, but like lose the New York in the moniker. Because one thing I've believed for a long time, and I think it's playing out more now than ever, is I think authenticity is one of the most undervalued assets. And I think as we continue to progress, you're going to see people. I think we're going to see media companies as we know them and TV stations disappear or be very less relevant. And I think we're going to consume a lot more from individuals directly. So I think in that world, there's an opportunity for a bunch of people, right? Because there's, just the way anybody can make it in real estate in New York, anybody can make it in social media. Anybody. And so, we'll say there's a lot cooking. There's a lot of different directions. There's a lot of things happening. I'm looking forward to like this being over. And the reason going back to like September is because I think in September, like we talked about earlier, like you'll start seeing people being able to go to sporting events again. Right. And, that'll be a great opportunity to collaborate with some brands, because I think at that juncture, I think it's very reasonable that like they're going to see more in-game commentary, or like influencers around the stadium engaging with fans or players or so on, to create content for their social and to drive other socials and so on and so forth. So I think that'll happen. I know the Mets and I are going to do some stuff, so we'll see.
What? Oh my gosh. Well, you are exciting me, and I'm sure other people, for so much amazingness to come from you and just, the market as a whole. So thank you for sharing, that wider perspective of where you're going and where you're seeing kind of content creation go along, as we move forward. So perfectly said and ended there with regards to this segment. Mike, thank you again for sharing about your, real estate background and content. Kind of start wrapping it up because I know your time's important, but I don't want to leave without asking you, a New York expert and native, some tips for the audience with regards to, more specifically honing into things, as you mentioned, within your TikTok, where you did little episodes of NYC fun facts, things real New Yorkers never do, best places to eat, and so forth. You give so much great content about New York presently that people can find on your TikTok that come to mind with regards to what you put out there that you can share with the audience for tips.
So a lot of it is letting people see a glimpse into your world. And what you believe. Like, we know, I don't want to say we know things as New Yorkers, but like there's a being, or there's a way we move. And I think it resonates with people. I think the authenticity is what people want. Like, I think we're going to come to a certain point in the future where people come to New York and they're like, Mike, I want you to take us around. Right now, I don't know that will ever make sense financially for everybody, but maybe, right? Like, but there could be an app, right? Like there could be a variety of different things, because I think people are going to want that real perspective, regardless of what it is or where it is. Like there'll be mics everywhere in the world. And then some of us will explore past our bubbles, but that's life,
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Well, I want to hone in specifically into some of your expertise within neighborhoods of New York City, because I think I saw this video on your TikTok or somewhere, and me being a newbie, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I'm sure you can Google it, but most people don't take that time. And so can you kind of break down what, define some of the areas and neighborhoods that have like the smaller names like Soho, NoHo, Nomad, Nolita, and so forth, what they mean, what's the name behind it?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of Manhattan, and I think there's one in Brooklyn where they've like acronymed the name of what it is. So like it means something, right? So like Dumbo, right, is down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. So like Soho is south of Houston.
Houston, and that's how you say it.
Houston, right? Yeah. Not like the city in Texas.
Houston, yeah, that was me in the beginning. Okay.
NoHo is north of Houston.
Nomad
is north of
Madison.
Madison, yeah, north of like Madison Square Park.
And then Nolita
is north of Little Italy.
So crazy. Like, and unless you know the city, these names are almost like kind of pointless for people to know, right? Because
right. Well, people know where they go, right? Like so, like what you learn, like even New Yorkers, like we don't know how to get there. Well, we don't know how to tell you how to get there. We don't know which street it's on.
Right.
But we'll be like, all right, so you're gonna go, you take the highway to the exit over here that gets off by this, right? And then when you get to the light, you make a left, and then you see a big house, and you make a right at the big house, right? I'll have no idea what the address is, but I'll be able to get you there. And that's like kind of how New Yorkers see things. So
and everyone else gets lost in the mix. But yes, I love it. Put it that way. And so moving along again, because I want to be mindful of your time here, Mike. And any being a realtor, any best tips you can give people on renting in New York, given that's kind of a hot market right now?
I wouldn't say hot market. I think right now, because of everything that's gone on with COVID, it's very opportunistic for the rental market
Mm-hmm.
is very opportunistic for somebody that's looking to rent an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell you, take your time, do your due diligence, see what you see.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, like whatever your price point is, it doesn't matter what the price point is, right? When you're looking at apartments, you're like, that's what your money gets you.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's not like a secret magic apartment that's like 4 times better at that same money in the better location.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I had $1 for every time somebody told me, oh, if this was 2 blocks west, I would take it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, this apartment is 2 blocks west, but it's $300 more 2 blocks west, and you don't want to spend that $300 to be 2 blocks west, and that's fine.
Wow.
But when you're looking at apartments, like you're gonna see the mean, you'll know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So but there's a lot on the market right now. So I would maybe explore a new neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and go in a different direction.
Yep.
I'd probably look, if I was looking to move, at like areas that were most lively during Corona,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe look to spend time there, because you'll assume that you have a vibrancy in those areas.
That's some great tips. I like that. And so with regards to, something that affected probably yourself, the real estate market, broker fee being gone right now, do you think that's something that's going to stay or come back?
It's not really gone, but in a lot of cases,
Okay.
it's being paid by the landlord, right? For a large segment of what the business is right now, just given Corona.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I've seen it. Like when I started in 2009, 60% of the transactions had some sort of concession, like whether it was they covered a broker's fee or so on, or they gave a free month's rent. So it's just how the market moves as as things come. There's more inventory now than any time, so landlords need to be proactive in order to make some money. So, some money is better than no money, right? So but you see a difference. Some landlords are very proactive, some aren't, but a lot of it depends on their individual circumstance as well. So every situation is kind of different.
So landlords are kind of picking that up right now, and being proactive is kind of the better thing.
I mean, listen, there's a lot of landlords with significant concessions, right? I mean, listen, if I was looking to move to New York, I would figure out what's important to me, right? And there's 3 things that are generally important. 1 is location. 2 is amenities, or like size and finishings, and 3 is price, right? Those are your 3 knobs. And to some people, 1 is more important than the other, but you twist and turn those 3 to come to whatever it is,
Yep.
right?
Because you like to have all those, but not often can you find all those.
You can. You just have to spend more money. Yep. Like we can all get that dream apartment, that dream house. We can. It exists. It just may exist outside of our price range.
Very true. Very true.
So, and then once you see it, it's like what's important. Then you figure out, if location isn't as important, then explore New York. There's more than just Manhattan.
Agreed. And Queens.
Yeah, Manhattan. Brooklyn. Even the Bronx.
I would start definitely with Brooklyn, Queens, and all that. Definitely want to venture into other places of the city myself. But since you are actively out there, and you have a partnership, with a major like food carrier right now, like what are some places you recommend to eat, Mike, in New York?
All right. So I get this question a lot, right? And I think the easiest way to answer this is all of last year. So like I've rated a lot of places, right? And the easiest thing to do, because so many people like different things, right? So like it's hard to be like, this is the best, because there's the best in everything, right? There's the best in 14 different variations of Latino culture food, right? So like there's so many different things, but all of last year I gave 3 perfect 10s, right? Out of all the places I've rated. Right? 1 was a bagel place, 1 was a pizzeria, and 1 was an Italian bakery.
Okay.
So I would start with those, right? It was So the pizza place is the Fyra Pizza. It's in Midwood in Brooklyn. It is $6 a slice, and the place looks dirty. But it is possibly one of the most amazing things I've eaten in my life.
Ooh, what's it? How do you pronounce it?
Defara.
Defara. Okay.
The bagel place is Brooklyn Bagels, which is ironically in Astoria. I do believe though that they just opened a Brooklyn location.
Okay.
And then the Italian pastry place is Fortunato's Bakery, which is in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
All right. Well, there you have it. Those are 3 great recommendations. And I would say they all kind of fall within New York centricness, right? The pizza, the bagel, the Italian. So I love that. And so I can't thank you enough for all the amazing content, your story, Mike. It's just everything about you, your authenticity. I want people to go, see what it is I've been seeing. Where can people connect with you with regards to your social and just anything?
Yeah. So I spend most of my time on TikTok. You will find some of it on Instagram as well. But it's Mike Schulte NYC. And that's pretty much anywhere. So if you want to see some of the older YouTube or podcast stuff, it's Mike Schulte NYC pretty much anywhere. So if you throw that into a search browser of Google, you'll see, everywhere you can find me.
Perfect. At Mike Schulte NYC. Love it.
Yeah.
So go connect with Mike, go see all the amazingness I've, seen and love him for. But before I let you go here, Mike, I want to do this really quick segment that should only take a minute. I'm going to ask a speed round of questions and you just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you down to play that?
Sure. Let's go. I'm a little scared, but let's go. The inner New Yorker in me is like, I don't know what I'm about to get asked over here.
It's nothing big. So here we go. Okay. Favorite season in New York City?
Spring or fall?
Favorite New York borough?
Queens.
Favorite New York neighborhood?
Astoria.
Favorite New York food?
Oh man, all of them. I can't. Yeah, like I don't have a favorite food, and I eat so much of it.
Okay, I hear that, being a foodie there. Okay, favorite. Yeah. You have to pick one of these though. Favorite New York tourist destination?
The Edge.
Okay, somewhere I want to go. People have been saying that's the spot. Favorite non-tourist destination?
Oh man, I don't want to give this one out.
That's not fair. Okay, pick another one.
No. I would honestly say like a variety of the larger parks in Queens and even the Bronx. Like and I don't want to say any one specifically, and it's not about any like hiding anything, but like if you just looked at a map of New York, and you looked at the parks, like some of the larger parks, like the amount of greenery and escape from New York that you can have within New York is incredible.
Okay, I love that. Okay, so, and with that being said, I'm going to hold you more specific to favorite New York park.
Right now it's Alley Pond.
Alley Pond, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Favorite holiday in the city?
I mean, I think everybody loves Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, okay.
Yeah, because people come together outside of Corona.
I love that. That's actually...
Yeah, and it's universal, so it's not like it's your holiday or my holiday.
Favorite NYC subway line?
Ooh, I'd probably say the 7.
What color is that?
Purple.
Purple, nice. All right. Favorite weekend getaway from New York?
The Catskills.
Perfect. And one word to describe New York City?
Home.
Oh. And number 1 tip on how to live your best life in New York?
Be who you are and try to find a tribe of people that are like you, because in New York you can find a multiplicity of people that like a variety of different things, and that's the beauty of what New York is.
Wow, you gave some great answers with this segment, Mike, and just overall as a whole. Again, wrapping our interview up, I can't thank you enough for your time, Mike. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to more content from you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to Gossipnista. Your support means the world. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends. Can't wait till next week's episode? Follow along on Instagram at Gossipnista to get my latest New York happenings. But if you live and breathe New York City like I do and want even more, go to our website at gossipnista.com, explore, and and subscribe to our newsletter to get insider tips first. Lastly, if you have any questions and or scoop on the city, you can email me at gossipnista@gmail.com. Until next time, you know you love me. XOXO Gossipnista.